Hello, my friends. John LaRuffa here with another straight up solo. And in this episode, we are going to take a look at Red Dust Rebellion, and I'm going to talk to you about it from a solo perspective, playing against the Curiosity bot. All right, let's get started. Okay, folks, and as usual, please like and subscribe to my YouTube channel if you haven't already. And if you have, I really do appreciate the support. Thank you very much. So, I just finished the game. This is what it looks like at the end. I got pretty much a really full game out of it. So, the Dust Storm came in at the sixth to last card, which is kind of right at the beginning, I guess, or so, maybe a little bit deeper than it could have come. So pretty full game. I won, as far as I could tell, because I was playing the Red Dust, the Rebellion forces, okay? So the Dusters, and I was playing the Church, okay? And so those two are the ones I was playing. I was playing against the Corporation and the Mars government. So I ended up finishing the game where the Mars government was 2 spots away from victory condition. I was, 4 spots above it. And then on the Rebellion one of the CR, the Church, I was 1 away. Now, I think that counts as a win right at the beginning of the victory because it says after 3 rounds, if any faction has met the victory condition, the game ends, okay? So that was pretty much it. I had met the victory condition at that point because this is the end of it, and so I won. I know you cannot win early when you're playing against the Curiosity bot as one player, like if you're playing against 3 of them. But I was doing 2 versus 2, and 2 versus 2 is a little bit more finicky in the fact that it says that if 2 players are playing against 2 Curiosity bots, you can win at any time. But I just rolled it out to the end, although this is the first time where I finished a victory round where I was above. So I think it's a total win. Anyway, so let's talk about this game. What is a coin game? A coin game is a counterinsurgency game where you are doing a couple of different actions to basically move your forces around. And in this game, the forces either are the cubes or they're special forces or rebels or whatever, represented by your cylinders. One or the other. The cubes are always active, always there, always present. The rebel forces or the corporation spec ops are only active if they are showing this side. Otherwise, they're hidden. And when they're hidden, they can be used for all sorts of guerrilla warfare style things, like ransacking, like converting in the case of the Church or the Reclaimers. They can do all sorts of things. They can kind of take over things, pull off, different types of spec ops style things. Okay, they can ambush. They can coordinate, so you can do different things to repair stuff. And so this one feels very unique in the side of coin games because you have collateral damage. So let's talk about that a second. So, before we get into that, the other thing that you do in this game is you're going to be bringing forces onto the board by training. You can move them around with traveling. And then, of course, like I said, you can attack. And so you can outright attack. Now, this game is interesting in the fact that some of the forces, when you attack, might cause collateral damage. And that is dependent upon a very simple one-time dice roll check. And that brings me to the first thing that is unique about this, or I shouldn't say unique because I haven't played every single coin game, but is different than the Fire in the Lake, than Falling Skies, than All Bridges Burning, and Gandhi. In this game, when you attack, you only roll the dice once. And what you do, and let me give you an example of this. So let's say I take these 2 forces right here, and I want to attack these. So this is 2 versus, well, that one's not a great example. Let's put them up here. So here, I've got 2 of my forces versus 4 of the enemy's forces, okay? So I have some Earth government forces, which is like a neutral faction that can be controlled by the corporation or by the Mars government. And I got the Mars government there. So what I'll do is I'm going to roll 2 dice. And I'm going to sum those dice up. And if that dice value is lower or equal to the total number of forces on the board, then I'm going to cause damage. All right, in this case, it is higher. So I would not have caused any damage. If I did cause damage, and there are cubes over here, they kind of protect. They're like basically work as buffers to protect the damage. But if I do cause the damage, I have to place a damage token, and then I have to reduce population to displace them. And that whole damage token and population thing is really key for the two victory conditions of the Mars government and for the Dusters, because the the situation with the red dust movement, the Dusters, if you want to call them that, they are trying to maximize the population, which are represented by these green areas here, or the population when you have more than that. And they get 1 point, if you will, times the number of passive opposition, or 2 points times the number of active opposition. And so to win the game as the Mars, as the red dust movement, you sum up the total opposition plus your total bases to get your total score. So you want to have a bunch of population with a lot of opposition. And damage reduces that. It will reduce the population. It will put damage on there that you're going to need to use coordinate or other special activities to fix it. Now, the same is true for the Mars government, the blue, except when they attack, they just eliminate forces without rolling dice. So they eliminate 1 for 1 that's in there. But they can't eliminate a hidden force. So in this case, if there was an attack here, they don't know where these guys are. So that's where the counterinsurgency happens. They have to find them first using a different type of action, like secure, for instance. And so if they secure, then they're able to reveal my rebel troops there. And once they're revealed, then they are available to be squashed and wiped out, okay? And so they don't cause damage, but the rebels do cause damage, potentially. The other thing that's very clean about the attack is, after you've rolled the dice, you look at each of the die and you say, is this die equal to or less than the number of forces you brought? And if it is, you do 2 damage worth of hits, okay, I should say, or you remove 2 forces, or in the case of the Earth government, which are elite, only 1 of them. So in this case, I would remove both of these right here, or I could remove 1 of the Earth government and I put them in casualties, because this is below these guys, and this is above, so it wouldn't hit. So the maximum that the rebels can do, no matter how many forces they have there, is 4 attack, or 4 hits worth, I should say. I don't want to say damage because that'll be confusing. 4 hits worth. So they are not nearly as strong as a bunch of massed forces from Earth government or corporations or other things. So it's kind of interesting. They have the ability to damage things, which could be bad, and they also have a limited attack force. Whereas the government's forces, 1-to-1, they'll wipe out people, but you have to reveal first. So there's a trade-off, and that's what's cool about this game, is that you have trade-offs. Now, there's other things, like if you travel too many people into one spot and there's active support or support in general, it will reveal them, making you vulnerable. And all those things are similar from coin to coin to coin. The other thing you'll have in this game, which is very similar to other coins, is that you're going to be placing bases on the board in different areas. The bases in this game do a little bit more. The church bases over here, the conversion centers, help you to reduce the profits of the corporation. And the profits of the corporation are what they're using to win. They've got to get 36 profits. Now, when I finished the game, they were at 27, but it was interesting because they had a very slow burn. They had virtually no profits through probably almost 2/3 of the game. It wasn't until that 3rd round when they started really exploiting and doing different things, they started building up. So I'm interested to see, as I play again sometime soon, if I play the corporation, for instance, how tough is it to build up for them? Because it took them a long time from the NP side, the non-player side. So you have bases that are a little bit more multifunctional in this game. The terraforming bases of the corporation generate more of those profits to win. The red dust, the dug-in bases allow for counterattacks. That's one thing I really didn't talk about, but if you get attacked and you have some survival, you can counterattack if there are certain conditions that you meet. And then these bases over here, the conversion centers, will help reduce the profits and also help you gain more people out there and other things. So there's a lot of very similar things in regards to coins that you will be familiar with. Then there is this Earth government controlled non-player, okay? And the control of the Earth government in this game, in my game, shot up to 10 almost right away and stayed there. It kind of went between 8 and 10. And it was a big event that did that. I'd be interested to see how the game would play differently if that was in place. But basically, the Mars government controlled the Earth government the entire game for me, just about. And so what that does is it provides victory conditions and help for the Mars government player. It also provides a bunch of population on Earth, which you see, which does get reduced at each of the 3 dust storms in the game, or those are kind of like the big reset rounds. And then also provides a bunch of population. The corporation controls the transfer of resources from Earth all the way to Phobos, and Phobos then is kind of where the spaceport is, where they can land in different places. And I'm not going to get into all the nuances and details there, but this supply chain is a little bit longer and takes a little bit longer to activate. So while it's easier in some ways for the rebel players to get forces on the board, it takes a little bit longer for the corporation to do so, and a little bit longer to get Earth government forces out because they've got to come from Earth. So the control of Earth government goes between Mars government and Corp, depending on how you're doing on this on that scale over there. And whoever controls them will get basically the access to these satellites, which allow you to do special things, bombardment, which has some risks, some navigation things that helps you get through dust storms, some drop pods, which allow you to kind of put people anywhere you need to with regards to the Earth government. So there's a lot of different things there, nuances, etc. Okay. And again, I'm really explaining a lot of this kind of as if you are semi-familiar or kind of unfamiliar with coins. Now, the basic structure of this game, if you have no idea how a coin works, is this is a card-driven game. And so you have this deck of cards, and each card is going to have a couple of information pieces on it. First of all, it has this flashpoint, which I'll talk about in a second. Then it has the order of activation, with each of these factions activating in a specific order. And then you have a light shade event and a dark shade event. The light shade events can be carried out, or usually are carried out, by the corporation or the Mars government faction, the black or the blue. The dark shade usually are carried out by the rebellion, the Red Dust Movement, the red, or the Church of the Reformers, the orange. You don't have to do either of those. You can do a full action or a limited action with special things and such and so forth. But the events in this game seem extremely effective and powerful. So usually if an event will work for you, you're going to want to place if you're eligible, you're going to want to place your token in this event box and take the event. And it will do something special that kind of bends the rules, so to speak, to get something done. And it is usually worth doing in almost all cases. Not all, but when it applies, usually it is. When you do the event, the other eligible faction, the second person there, and some people normally will be non-eligible because they all have gone the turn previously, they're able to do a full operation and even add a special activity. Now, each faction has a list of 4 full operations that they can do and 3 special activities. And I've already discussed these with you for the most part. Training or recruiting is where you get more people. Securing is how you move to labyrinths and then reveal rebels. Recon is how you move to desert spaces and reveal rebels. And assault is where you attack. And for the most part, these special activities will have kind of unique things for the faction. A lot of them will have ambush for the rebels, so that lets you fix your dice so you know what you're going to do. Coordinate, which will help you rebuild. Rebuilding will give you a couple of different things. It'll help you to increase that opposition because now you're the good guys, you're fixing damage. So, the heck with the Mars government, and then opposition helps you win. And they have petition on exploit is a little bit different, but each of these special activities are somewhat unique. Public relations, that's what I was looking for. You can repair as the corporation and get some profits out of that. So you can advance your marketing there. And then there's ways to do other things like convert units, like Purify, which will allow you to exchange one enemy unit for yours. Entrench, which allows you to protect your labyrinths, which are what these big domes are called, and that helps prevent damage because the Mars government doesn't want any damage. And transport is just a special way to move things. Ransacked helps the church gather these asset cards, which I'll talk about. And then one unique thing is campaign for the Red Dust movement, where they can play these event cards, these campaign cards, which is like a special thing that goes into effect, for the whole round until a dust storm happens. And so that's kind of unique. And then preach is sort of like a conversion kind of thing and a way to change population, etc. Now, the other thing I want to talk about really briefly here is this wilderness space. This wilderness space is not really part of the map per se. It's kind of it's adjacent to every single exterior desert spot. And if you want to go from this spot over to here, you got to go through the wilderness. So this is kind of the linkage. And it's usually pretty well controlled by the Church of the Reclaimers, because they are out basically trying to destroy everything. So they're going to damage a lot of stuff. They're going to try to deplete population. They're going to try to build up bases, because the way they win is number of places they control plus the number of bases, and they're trying to exceed all the other bases on the board. So you have very, very asymmetric factions, very asymmetric goals. Now, what is unique about this game in particular, very unique versus other coin games? Well, the biggest thing is these Red Dust Rebellion Reclaimer asset cards. These cards are spent for the resources that you need in order to activate your church cards, but you can also discard them to jump the order. So in this case, in this game, the Reclaimers are always at the back. But if you want to go first or forward or faster than the others and you're eligible, you can discard some of these cards to jump the order, one card per spot. And in doing so, it will allow you to take that action sooner, because the first person acting the round has the most choices most of the time. And you can even play these as special actions. They give you capabilities to bend the rules or to make things easier for you, or it's an entire deck of customized events that work really, really well specifically for the Church of the Reclaimer. So that's pretty unique. The other thing that seems pretty unique are these campaign cards, which will be placed and allow for something specific that is going to help the progress of the Dusters. So I thought that was cool. And again, those are the most majorly different things. Plus this logistics thing is unique. The way that the damage and the population comes into place is a little bit unique. Okay, so all of those things, that is I'd say a very big overview of what's going on now. How in the world is this game controlled by non-player forces? That's what these cards are for. This is the Curiosity deck. The Curiosity deck, the way it works is when it's the time for the non-player to act, and they do not choose to do an event. So for instance, if it was this case right here, the non-player is going to act over here. He can do a full operation and may add a special. You're going to take this deck of cards out. You're going to reveal until you get to the first card that matches the faction. In this case, it'll be a Mars government card. Then it's going to ask you a question. Any labyrinth with support and any rebel base? Yes or no? If the answer is yes, then you go to the next condition. If it's no, you skip the card, go to the next card. And then it'll say, well, if I roll 2 dice, 2d6s, is that less than or equal to the available Mars government troops? If it's no, you flip it over and you're going to do a specific yes or no thing based on what this is. Assault. Assault could remove a rebel base or any rebel support. If yes, then you're going to start on condition number 1 and you're going to follow this down. If no, you're going to start down here and secure. This is an assault action. You're going to carry out assault and you're going to do it in the way it tells you. This is a secure action. You're going to do it in the way it tells you. For the most part, they follow exactly how you would play, except you literally carry it out as it says here, because sometimes there's nuances of what they pay or how they play. For the most part, They're very similar to what you're going to do, but those nuances are very important. And that's why they give you this massive, they give you two massive player aids. First, they give you the curiosity player aid here. So what this does is this talks about how does it resolve the first and second eligible thing. That's pretty easy to understand once you get going. Then you've got this piece priorities, which is useful when you're trying to select what is it going to do or what's it going to place or whatever. You've got what it talks about effective events, like what does that mean? How does an event qualify as effective? That doesn't come up too much unless you're taking an event that isn't an essential or a critical event. And then there's this, and this is really what you have to decide you're going to cope with, love, embrace, or whatever. Do not get into this game if you are not ready to digest, follow, and obey the tables on this page, okay? Now, what are these tables? So these are priority tables. And what will happen is the card will say to you, and I should save this for a solo, because you're not going to use this at all if you're playing with 4 people, 4 humans. But the card will say, you need to do such and such for the Mars government using place bases. So you go down the place bases and stop at the first dot, and it'll say the first place you want to place bases is where there is a space that is not at active support. So you scan the board and look for all the places that are not at active support, but meet the condition that you're trying to do. And then that's what these little pawns are for. They help you understand, okay, not at active support. Well, this is active opposition, and maybe that's one that works and that one that works. It's not every single space because it's only places that you would be able to actually place a base. Okay, so there are some things that narrow it down first. If there's a tie, you go to the next condition. All right, not at active support and the place with the most population. And if sometimes it'll say, is the red dust is the player a red dust rebellion movement? If so, then you use the red. There's a lot of this if then here. These are really straightforward, but the move priorities take some serious doing to understand. But once you understand it, once you get inside the head of this, it becomes easy. Otherwise, this is a bit of a slog. There's no doubt about it, okay? So how does this table work? Well, first it's going to say, the first thing, select the destination using the space selections. So use this to figure out where you're going to try to move to. Then select an origin space based on not violating any of these things, okay? And what this is a list of things that you got to keep. So it says keep sufficient forces to change no control. If there are more cubes than vulnerable enemies in the region, keep acting cubes greater than rebels. And again, you're following this down on the specific one you're playing. If it's the non-player corporation, you're using that. If it's the non-player Mars government, using this. But you got to make sure you're keeping all these things. And then, after you've made sure you got those conditions in good shape, then you go to select forces to move to destination. And this is where you start counting. Get one this to there, get one this to there, get this equal to that, get equal to that. This is pretty confusing. There's no doubt about it. And this is going to take you some time, and it will also be a bit of a groan fest, if I'm going to be honest with you, until you really understand how is the non-player faction making its decisions. Once you can understand, once you get into this, which will happen probably in you're near the end of the first game or maybe in your second game, you can then say, I know how this non-player is going to react. I know what they're going to keep on the board, so I can ignore all sorts of conditions and do what it's going to do. And that is really, I think, a big part of speeding the game up. Because I got to tell you, moving with the non-player factions is a big pain in the neck. And it kind of has to be because there's so many conditions. But once you understand the way they act, you can skip a lot of that. And you know, look, they're only going to move. They're going to keep all these things here because they got, like, for instance, the corporation is never going to move any of their cubes out of a space that has 4 or less. So it's always going to keep 4 cubes in a base space. So I know it's never going to move from here. It's never going to move from here. It's never going to move from here, here, or here. So really, as it stands right now, none of these forces are going to move. And so you then say, okay, well, based on that, then that tells me, is it going to move at all or not? All right, now let's say it has an abundance in one spot. Okay, it's only going to move from there. Well, how's it going to get there? Well, it can use a spaceport to go from here to here because it's got a controlled space. Okay, that's exactly what it's going to do. Now, this chart will tell you that, but it takes a heck of a long time to figure out exactly what, and then it takes a long time to figure out all the conditions. So this is not for the faint of heart. Now, I think the designers did a fantastic job. This is probably the most approachable, executable coin game I've played in a very long time, maybe ever. It's not, I guess Falling Skies was easier, but I got tired of it, comparatively speaking. This one's better than that one, but I'll get to that in a minute. But that's the one thing that is tough. The priorities and everything else, that's a lot easier. Following these directions takes some doing. There's no doubt about it. But once you get the hang of it, it's a little bit easier. But make no mistake, this is a game of 6 to 8 hours at least as a solo until either you master the system and then you're just going to trim it to probably 6 hours because it's a very long game. There's no doubt about it. So these cards drive the action and these cards make for a competitive bot. Now, one thing you can't really do in this game is you cannot really change the difficulty. So the bot is just as difficult as it's going to be. There is nothing that says, if you want a more difficult game, do this. You want a more difficult game, do that. There's only one scenario in this game. It's the main scenario. But I think it's a very fair scenario. I barely won, and that's because I have a lot of experience with coin games. I don't think you're going to walk in this and say it's a cakewalk. All right. I also got a bit lucky. The events can be very helpful at times. I got lucky because I had an event that basically gave me an opportunity to put this under my control. And I was struggling to penetrate these defense forces here, just getting batted back and everything else. And that event, halfway through the third dust round, wiped out all of the coin-controlled units here and allowed me to put just a little bit of presence there. And that was all I needed to get the foothold because the Mars government and I were neck and neck in trying to get that victory condition. And that was a huge swing for me. And then because I was controlling the rebels, I was able to kind of knock other things out. And maybe in this game, maybe you really do need to control only one faction and let the bots control the other three. Perhaps that's important. I just did 2 and 2 because I find that you take more turns that way. Okay, so I've told you a lot about this game in generalities. And I think that there's probably some very good playthroughs if you want to see more, but it's really tough to demonstrate exactly what it's like to play the game and make it make sense. I think what I try to do here is just basically describe to you what is going on and the situation. Now, I'm pretty sure that's basically what I wanted to tell you. That's all the differences I can see. So there's 1 or 2 nitpicks I want to put in real quick before we go to my final thoughts. First of all, this overflow box over here is silly. This should be up here and this should be down here. These tracks should be reversed. I know that sounds kind of goofy, but it's naturally, by the way, this is the best board setup of any coin game from a solo player standpoint I can see. So I'm giving them huge kudos for that because it's, first of all, it faces me instead of the one for Gandhi, which is the other way around, so you're always looking at it sideways. Second of all, these movable player boards can be stacked like this to kind of consolidate what you're doing. Third of all, everything is very easily understood, spotted, read, everything else. There's little bits of details on the board, but for the most part, it's not necessary there. The only thing was this should have probably been there. Now, luckily this is very self-explanatory, but at the beginning, well, that's silly. I don't know, what I'm doing here. That should be a little closer because I never used the overflow boxes, even though I could have, but there's enough space for just about everything. That's the one thing. The board layout gives you plenty of room. There's no real small territories except for these 2 right here. So you have a lot of room. Maybe this gets a little crowded, but I would have swapped those around. That's a very small nitpick. I don't know why I felt compelled to mention it, but I did. All right. The other thing that I will give as a big bonus is the art style, the cards, the illustrations, they all look great. And they all help with the theme, okay? Which I think is cool. Most of the coin games are in black and white because they're older or they're more historic, and that's just drab and boring. So I was really excited to see a little pop of color. And the artistic way, it was really kind of cool. All right, so I've gone over it. Let me tell you what I think now. That was a long, long overview, and I'm sorry, but this is a big game. Let me give you my sum up thoughts. Okay, so a couple of things I want to point out right away for big positives. Number one, I love how streamlined the attack is. That's great. In some of the other coin games, the attack procedure was a massive headache. There were a lot of if ands, there were a lot of things, and it was the last action I wanted to take because it was such a pain in the neck to execute. Here, it's simple, it's meaningful, it has some risk and rewards. It just feels like it's appropriately blended in with all the actions. And I will say this about this game: every action is very well blended in with the other. None of them are a headache to accomplish or to deal with. Everything just feels like it is at an approachable level from the player standpoint. From the NP standpoint, the non-player standpoint, the cards are excellent. They're way better than a flowchart. Yes, they are like mini flowcharts, but because you have each card, it starts you off on a little path that just makes it a lot better than just one massive flowchart that you're going through over and over. So I love the card system. Very good, very elegant, very competitive. I didn't go into some of the nuances, but I think I gave you the flavor of the way it worked. All right, a lot of conditional stuff, but very much easier than the old flowcharts. The only thing I'll say, like I said before, is that when I had to move around enemy forces, that ground the game to a halt. Very easy to know what you want to move around, but when the enemy is going to move, until you really internalize that priority table, it will drag. And that is the only thing I would say that took a while from this game, but that is part of the coin, okay? So you can't get away from something like that. There's just no easy way. It has to make intelligent moves. Otherwise, it's going to be a complete pushover if it's not doing what it's supposed to do. Now, other things I really liked. I liked the 4 different factions. I thought that even though this was a fictitious situation, they all made sense to me. I can understand, and I know historically you'd say, well, the historic coins, yeah, but I didn't know, early Russian history or the nuances of the different factions in Gandhi or all these other things. I had no idea, right? They were very abstract. Here, because I understand sci-fi, because I'm a sci-fi fan, I know exactly the kinds of decisions that these things are going to do. The Dusters are going to try to rebel. They're going to try to stir stuff up. They're going to try to blow stuff up. But they don't want to, they're still living in these places. So even though they're causing damage, it's very punitive to them. So they want to minimize that. The Church of the Redeemers, or not Redeemers, the Reclaimers, they don't care. They want to blow everything up because they want to turn people into, Martians that live outside. So they're just blowing things up, destroying things. It's Carnage City. They're like the religious fanatics that you'd expect them to be. They want everybody to live in the desert and blend in with nature. They're like a super Martian eco-terrorist group. And that makes total sense to me. I can see what they want to do, right? They're not really aligned, but they're with anybody, but they're causing chaos in such a way because they want to overthrow everything. And so they're loosely there with kind of doing similar things to the Red Dust movement, but they're certainly not allies and friends. The corporations, everybody knows about the old greedy corporations. They got unlimited resources and everything they want to do, and they want to maximize profits, and they're willing to cut corners, exploit, do whatever they need to do, or act as the good guys if they need to in order to get those profits up. And the Martian government wants to put a lid on all of that stuff, right? They want to get active support. They want to convince Earth that they're the best so they can keep control of the elite forces and get the resources and control what comes from Earth. They want to build things up. They want to keep everything else down. They want to keep everything under control, and they're willing to do it no matter what the cost. Totally, really cool. And I think the designer was trying really hard to make this fantasy. He wrote so much into the history and the events and everything. I haven't read it all because, I just haven't had time. But I respect that tremendously. He created a narrative around a fictitious thing in order to not offend a lot of people about some human realities. And I also think that's really important. Look, we all know that the checkered past of humanity is dicey at best, okay? And in order to explore some of those dicey things, which this game does, You have to be in a fictitious situation because otherwise people are just going to be offended. And I can kind of understand that, although I've got pretty thick skin in a lot of these things. But if you took something that was really important to me and made a game around it that was showing the dark periods of that person or that situation's history, I could have some sensitivities to that. I understand. So this is a great way to do that without getting people upset, right? Otherwise, if you had picked a radical fanatic group in history, that may not have gone so well, right? And who wants to play as that radical fanatic group in history if they were really a despicable kind of force? Here you can play the Church of the Reclaimers because it's a fictitious thing and not feel guilty about it. So again, I think that's really the whole thing is very admirable. He did a good job. He created a good, relatable story, and it was one that doesn't make anybody frustrated. I also thought, in general, the whole system was very elegant. Nothing really felt like it was bogged down. And to me, this is my favorite coin game I've ever played, period. And I sold my other coin games. Not that they're bad, but from a solo standpoint, this to me was the best. Medium complexity, it says it's exactly like it says on the box. Medium complexity, very high solo. So some of the other ones I had were more complex. They had more going on. I don't need that. This is enough. This is plenty. Some of them I had were almost too lower complexity, and it was like it got kind of boring to play in because it was so vanilla. It just felt like it was the same thing I played it 6 or 7 times. And I'm done. I don't need to play anymore. This one has a lot to explore. There's enough complexities, enough uniqueness to try all sorts of different things. I really liked how it went. And if you are into coin games and want something in that medium level, I think this is going to be a good one for you. Everybody has their own nuances. It's very hard to recommend these because these things it's like recommending a weightlifting regimen. Everybody's going to want to focus on different things, but no matter what you do, it's going to be heavy and it's going to take a lot of work. There was 100 pages of rules to get through. And that is my last thing I want to mention here. And this is really important. There is a tool that Google has, an experimental tool called Notebook LM. I think it's Notebook LM. You can take the rules in PDF form and you can upload them to this program, which is online for free. And then you can ask the thing questions and it will tell you the answers based on the rule books, the source material, and everything. Oh my gosh, is this awesome. The biggest challenge I've ever had with playing against coin games is that I'm constantly looking up rules in a very difficult to find rule book. Now, these rule books are actually pretty good, but just asking the question was like asking a game expert. It was like sitting next to the designer and you could ask it, where do I move my casual, or when I remove these troops, where do they go? Available or casualties? And that you would say, where does the NP Corp move them? Where does the NPMG do? What is the very specific questions, and it would answer them succinctly with references to the rules and in full answers that really made it easy. So it took the play time in the first game and that whole complexity level down a notch and made it much more approachable. I love that tool. It's useful for any board game you want, honestly, but it was essential for coins. I feel like we have a breakthrough. Finally, I have, and I'm not big on AI doing things for me. I'm not big on AI creating stuff for me or whatever, but I love that AI makes it quick to find an answer to a question I actually have, and I can fill it with exactly the truth data, which in this case are the rule book and the player aids and the player book in PDF form. If you're going to play coin, I cannot see why you wouldn't do that from now on. So check it out. Great tool. Notebook LM on Google. I think that's what it's called. Pretty sure. And it makes it so much easier here. So this is a long review. This is a heavy game. This is not a game for everybody. Do your research. If you like coin, I think this is a great solo coin. If you don't know what coin is, watch a lot of videos. Don't take the plunge unless you're sure you want to read 100 pages of rules, spend hours and hours and hours through that. And they do a great job, by the way. These rules, they give you a full playthrough of a game without the NPs. They give you examples of a playthrough with the NPs. So everything is in the box to learn it. It is an approachable coin to learn because of that. But it's still like learning a second language. It takes time. So I like it a lot. It won't be for everybody, but if you're a coin fan, I think it's definitely worth checking out, especially if you like solo coin. This is a good one. So thanks so much for watching, everybody. I really appreciate it. Whatever you do in the future, I really hope you have a fantastic time doing it. Take it easy.